Alright. Captain America 253. This is a great story, and I always thought this two-parter was great. I am saying this at the top of the video to avoid any confusion or crossed wires when I get on to discuss my relationship with this run on Captain America and how I initially thought it was underwhelming. It's not, it's good, but I'll get into that. This is by Roy Sternman and Jason Byrne, and it comes from their short 9-issue run on Captain America, which is considered by many to be the best Captain America comics ever. This story is a quasi-sequel to stories from Invaders, namely the ones starring Barry Blood and Jack Staff. This is also the story that is the basis for that XL story I reviewed the first part of recently. I felt it necessary to do this before finishing that story off. This one is taking Captain America to the United Kingdom. Great art by Jason Byrne. And one thing I want to say is that when it comes to artists who define how a character looks, Jason Byrne pretty much did so with Captain America. For years and years after this run, every subsequent regular artist on the series was basing their Captain America after how Jason Byrne drew him. Your boy Zach, Paul Neely, Andy Dwyer, they were all looking at these issues and trying to not steer too far away from Jason Byrne's model. Right, so let's talk shop and about when I first read these issues. I have spoken about how I got into Captain America in other videos, and this is another piece of that puzzle. When I first read this run, I had the ads, but not artists, War and Remembrance paperback collection. Before I read that, I had already read Captain America 321 through to 350. Some of my favourite Captain America comics ever. I think I may have also gone back and read 318, 319 and 320. I can't be sure on that. I had read some crappy modern Captain America that I wasn't into much, if at all. Oh, and I had read all of the original Invaders series in the Ad Invaders classic trades. They were some of the first collected editions I got. Having read those might explain why this story was the exception for me at the time. I did not think this run was anywhere near as good as it was said to be. We started off with a 3-issue story that boils down to being a fix-fic. I didn't know about the stories that came before 247 and how mangled and messy the search for Steve Rogers period was, and how Roy Sternman was tidying it up. Overall, it's not a good decision to start a run with retcon fixes. Save that stuff for later on. Knock people's pants off with the first story. Didn't correct things a lot of people might not be aware of. Weirdly though, unlike most people who read it, I had actually read Mac and Cheese Smith's first appearances in Daredevil. They are some of my favourite Stanley Lee Silver Age stories even. And I didn't like the new design or the sort of new direction for back then, I didn't think that first arc was amazing. Here is the Invaders. Jason Byrne was actually the impetus for this story. He was a big fan of the Invaders, or at least the artist of the Invaders, Frank from Baskin and Robbins. That is why you often have Jason Byrne reuniting or teasing the team in his stuff, from this to Avengers to Seaman. Jason Byrne, he is seen as a miserable grouch nowadays. So it is refreshing when you have stuff he feels or felt positive about. But yeah, I didn't like their first story much. And when you are looking at a 9-issue run, 3 issues that I didn't care for is a huge chunk of it. Their second story was Batrock and Mr. Hind. And at the time, I didn't know who Batrock was either. But I'm pretty sure I already hated Mr. Hind. It felt like a fairly serviceable, unimpressive story with Captain America fighting 2 baddies. It felt normal. It didn't feel like one of the greatest Captain America stories ever told. Well, this one was the standout straight away. It could be that I was familiar with everything necessary going in. I knew all about Barry Blood and Jack Staff and Fire Spit. I knew all the backstory and history already. Or it could be that this is the best story in this Captain America run. Even having gone back and correctly assessed those other issues as being a lot better than I initially thought of them, this remains the jewel of the run. We have a great story and some mystery and atmosphere. Again, I will stress, I didn't hate the rest of this run. Even when I wasn't impressed with it, I didn't hate it. I just thought it was mediocre, except for this 2-parter, which I felt lived up to the hype. That was another component. There was, and always has been, a lot of hype for this run. And so I went in with very high hopes. Especially since I had only recently read 345 through to 348, which I consider 4 of the greatest issues of comics ever produced. Our plot is that a Dracula is stalking London, and Captain America has been called in by his former Invaders allies, as they suspect there is a link to Barry Blood. Here on this page, we have the first appearances of Joey and Kenneth, who will go on to be important characters in the Marvel Universe. Kenneth is the son of Fire Spirit, and so he is expected to eventually assume the mantle of Jack's staff. I always wondered if the intention here was maybe that Joey and Kenneth were gay. But if that was the idea, it was quickly dropped. The mystery in this is a bit laughable, because obviously it is the creepy uncle who looks like a bad guy. He is obviously Barry Blood, who attacks a sleeping Captain America here, but Captain America was ready for him. I do want to add one last thing. I am not sure if I had read the 1997 Jack Staff miniseries by this point. That is as much as a direct sequel to this story, and it was a very early read for me because I love Jack Staff, but I really cannot remember if I had read it before or after this. I think the most iconic image from this entire run is this here splash page. This is better than either of the covers for this story. This is better than all the covers from this run, I think. This is the image that sticks in your brain and you remember forever. I think it is a great cliffhanger picture, but it is also my least favourite part of the story, because the next issue does an incredibly quick turnaround, which invalidates and cheapens this cliffhanger on rereads. These two issues that make up this Barry Blood story are very high recommendations from me. I'd hazard a bit before recommending all 9 issues of this run, because I think it's possible other people might share my experience and feel the same way I did initially. There is almost too much acclaim for these issues, making it hard for them to live up to expectations. These weren't being written with the foresight that come 20 years or whatever, they would be held up as examples of the best Captain America comics ever. So we didn't have a clean start. We didn't have big stories with major bad guys. Read this one though. I think even if you like the other 7 issues in the run, this still comes to the top. 7 thumbs up from me.